The Mafia boss entered the meeting room with a firm face, but inside he was shaking. His translator had vanished overnight, leaving no message and no clue. The foreign investors were already seated, staring at him with hard, cold eyes. His men shifted nervously behind him because they had never seen him look unsure. Without the translator, the deal would collapse, and everyone knew it. It felt like the walls were closing in on him. He stepped forward and tried to look confident, but the moment the investors began speaking, he felt lost. Their words crashed into him like noise he couldn't understand. He nodded slowly, pretending he understood, but the pressure grew heavier with every second. One investor raised his voice, asking a question that sounded important, and the boss froze completely. His mind stopped working. His throat tightened. The room fell into a heavy silence. The boss opened his mouth, trying to respond with anything that made sense, but nothing came out. His heart pounded in his chest, and he felt the weight of 1,000 eyes judging him. His men exchanged worried glances. If he failed here, everything he had built would crumble. His enemies would take advantage instantly. He had never felt this cornered before, and for a moment, it felt like defeat was locked in. Then suddenly, the door opened. Everyone turned. A simple delivery girl stepped in, holding a food bag and looking slightly confused by what she walked into. She apologized softly for interrupting and asked who ordered the meal. No one answered. The room stayed frozen as if time stopped. She listened to the investors speaking, and her eyes blinked in recognition. Without hesitation, she quietly translated their last sentence in perfect detail. The entire room went silent again, but this time for a different reason. The boss stared at her as if she had appeared from another world. His shock was so visible that even his toughest men didn't dare move. A girl who came to drop food had just solved the crisis he couldn't escape. The investors leaned forward, suddenly more interested in her than the boss. She didn't act proud or scared. She just explained their questions clearly and simply, as if she was used to helping strangers without expecting anything. The boss gathered himself quickly and began answering through her, and the room eased. The tension melted. One investor smiled, impressed by the girl's calm spirit, and nodded toward the papers on the table. The boss signed them, maintaining his usual authority, but inside he knew the truth. She saved the entire deal. Without her, the meeting would have collapsed. She didn't even realize the power of what she had done. When the room cleared, the boss watched her quietly as she packed up the empty food container. He had seen brave men, loyal men, dangerous men, but he had never seen someone this unexpected step into chaos and fix everything with such simple confidence. For the first time in a long time, he felt something he didn't know how to name. And it all started because she walked in at the exact second he needed saving. When the meeting ended, the delivery girl tried to leave quietly, but the boss followed her outside. He wasn't used to chasing anyone, yet something about her calm confidence stayed in his mind. She handed him the food receipt and said softly that she didn't mean to interrupt anything. He told her she didn't interrupt. She saved everything. She shrugged like it was nothing. That alone unsettled him. People usually tried to impress him, fear him, or avoid him, but she acted like he was just another person picking up lunch. The boss tried to ask where she learned the language, but before she could answer, a black car parked across the street. It stayed there too long. The boss recognized the pattern instantly. Someone was watching. The same enemies who hoped the meeting would fail were already collecting information, and now they saw her standing next to him. He stepped in front of her slightly without thinking, blocking their view. She noticed and frowned, asking if everything was okay. He told her yes, but his voice was too sharp to be normal. He tried to give her money as thanks, hoping it would push her away from the danger that was slowly tightening around her. She looked at the money for a long second, then gave it back to him. She said she didn't help for reward and didn't need extra cash. She only delivered food. The boss froze. No one ever refused him. No one ever returned his money. It almost made him forget the black car for a moment. Her honesty felt strange, almost unreal, like a language he didn't understand. The black car finally drove away, but the boss knew it wasn't over. Once an enemy noticed something, they never stopped looking. He told her to go straight home, to walk fast, and not talk to anyone. She raised a brow. confused by the sudden seriousness. She asked again if there was trouble. He didn't want to scare her, so he simply said she had accidentally stepped into a world she didn't belong in. She held her delivery bag tighter, but didn't run. She just nodded and walked away with quiet bravery. His men approached him, warning him that the enemies might think the girl was important to him. That was how rumors started, fast and dangerous. The boss stared in the direction she walked, feeling a strange pull. She was not important to him. She couldn't be. She was just a girl, a translator by accident, a stranger who stepped in at the wrong moment. And yet, he felt uneasy letting her go alone. Hours later, the day had calmed for everyone except him. He sat in his office, trying to focus on paperwork, but he kept remembering her steady voice in the meeting room. He remembered how she didn't panic, how she didn't act afraid of him, how her eyes stayed honest even when he stepped too close. The memory stayed loud in his mind, so loud that he didn't hear his phone buzz the first few times. When he finally picked up the phone, his entire body went cold. A message had arrived from an unknown number. No words, just a picture. It was her, walking home, unaware of the danger. And the message came with a simple line underneath. Is she yours? The boss stood up slowly, his chest tight, realizing something terrifying. She was in trouble because of him, and enemies never asked questions without a plan. The boss stared at the picture on his phone, his jaw tightening. The delivery girl was walking down the sidewalk, unaware she had been marked. He didn't like the feeling rising in his chest. Something heavy, something urgent. Without thinking, he ordered 2 of his men to find her immediately and keep watch from a distance. They didn't question him, but they exchanged glances. They had never seen him this reactive over a stranger. The boss didn't care what they thought. He only knew one thing. The enemies were testing him, and if he didn't move fast, she would become the target they used to break him. She walked home normally, listening to music through one ear, swinging her food bag gently, as if it was any other day. The guards followed from far behind, but she noticed them almost instantly. She slowed down, glanced back, and frowned. She wasn't scared, just annoyed. She asked them clearly why they were following her. They tried to lie, saying they were just passing by, but she didn't believe it. She had sharp eyes and a sharper mind. Without warning, she crossed the street and confronted them directly, demanding the truth. When they told her the boss sent them to protect her, she became even more confused. She said she didn't need protection, didn't want any bodyguards, and didn't want to be part of whatever trouble he carried around. She walked away quickly, shaking her head in frustration. But the guards couldn't stop watching the street behind her, because a second black car was now crawling into view. It wasn't hiding its interest. It was slow, silent, and too focused on her. The danger was closing in again. The guards called the boss immediately. The boss didn't waste a second. He got into his car and drove faster than he had in years. She had almost reached her neighborhood when he saw her, still annoyed at everything, unaware of the car turning the corner behind her. He stopped beside her and told her to get in the car. She refused. She told him she wasn't afraid, and she wasn't going anywhere with a man she barely knew. But the black car rolled closer, and the boss lost his calm. He told her sharply that this wasn't about fear. It was about staying alive long enough to get home. She saw his eyes then, not angry, but serious, almost protective. Something in his voice made her pause. She finally stepped into the car, still confused, still stubborn. As soon as she closed the door, the black car sped off, disappearing into the traffic. She looked at him, finally realizing something was wrong. He explained that her face had been seen at the meeting. It wasn't her fault. She just walked in at the wrong moment. But enemies didn't care about innocence. They cared about leverage. She listened quietly, staring out the window. She wasn't trembling or breaking down. She simply looked thoughtful, like she was trying to understand a world she had never seen before. She asked why they thought she mattered to him. The boss didn't know how to answer that. He didn't even understand it himself. He only knew that the idea of something happening to her made something twist painfully inside him. When he dropped her at her door, she turned to him and said something that surprised him more than anything. If I'm in danger because of you, then tell me what I need to know to stay safe. No fear, no blame, just calm acceptance. The boss looked at her for a long moment. She didn't realize what she had just done. She had stepped into his world by choice. And once someone entered that world, they never left unchanged. The boss didn't expect her to invite the danger so plainly. Most people begged him to stay away from their lives, but she stood in her doorway, waiting for an answer. He stepped inside only because the street was too open, and enemies could be watching. Her apartment was small, clean, and quiet. Nothing like his world of security alarms and guards. She sat on the chair opposite him, arms crossed, waiting. He told her the truth in simple words. His enemies worked fast, and once they locked onto a face, they didn't forget it. She didn't gasp or panic. She just nodded once. Her calmness unsettled him again. She asked what he wanted her to do. He told her to stay inside, keep her phone charged, and let his men watch the street. She shook her head. That wasn't a plan to her. That was hiding. She said if trouble was coming, she needed to understand the rules of the world she accidentally stepped into. She needed to know what signs to look for, who to avoid, and what danger looked like before it reached her. The boss sat back, studying her. No one had ever spoken to him like that, clear, firm, and without fear. So he explained. Slowly, carefully. He told her how enemies used cars with tinted windows, how they tested people by following them twice before acting, how silence was louder than noise in his world. She listened so closely it almost surprised him. She repeated his instructions back to him, word for word, like she wanted to make sure she didn't miss anything. He realized she wasn't brave because she didn't feel fear. She was brave because she felt it and didn't run from it. As the conversation deepened, she finally asked the question she had been holding. Why me? Why would they think I matter to you? The boss looked away for the first time. He didn't want to admit that he reacted too quickly when he saw the picture of her earlier. He didn't want to admit that her calm voice in the meeting had stayed with him all day. He wanted to tell her she didn't matter, but the words wouldn't come out. Instead, he told her the enemies didn't need a reason. They only needed an opportunity. She accepted that answer even though she knew it wasn't the full truth. She stood up to bring him a glass of water, and for a moment, the boss watched her move around her small kitchen. She lived a simple life. She didn't have guards, power, or weapons. Yet she handled danger with a steadiness he rarely saw in trained men. When she sat back down, she told him she wasn't used to people protecting her. No family nearby. No friends close enough. Just work in life. Something in her voice made his chest tighten. The boss got up to leave, but she stepped in front of him and said he should teach her more if he wanted her to survive. He stared at her, unsure how a delivery girl had pulled him into a conversation he never expected to have. She wasn't asking for money or favors. She was asking for knowledge, real knowledge he didn't share with outsiders. He told her he would think about it. She shook her head. There's no time to think. You said they move fast. When he walked out of the apartment, he looked back once. She was standing in the doorway, watching the street, like she was already practicing the warnings he had given her. His men waited by the car, expecting orders. He finally understood something he wished he didn't. She wasn't a problem he could push away anymore. The moment she chose to face danger instead of hide from it, she became part of his world. And his world had a way of pulling people in deeper than they ever planned. The next morning, the boss sent 2 guards to watch her street again, but she stepped outside before they could settle into their hiding spots. She walked straight toward them with the same calm expression as yesterday. She told them she was going to work, and if they were supposed to follow her, then they should stop acting like shadows and walk where she could actually see them. The guards froze. No one ever spoke to Mafia guards like that. But she wasn't rude, just firm. She didn't want to live in fear, and she didn't want to feel hunted by the same people trying to protect her. When the boss heard what she said, he almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because she was unpredictable in ways he didn't know how to handle. He met her outside her workplace, and she looked at him with the same steady eyes. She told him she didn't want to hide all day, afraid of every sound. She wanted to keep living, keep working, keep being normal. The boss told her normal was gone the moment she walked into that meeting room. She shook her head and said, "Then teach me how to build a new kind of normal." That sentence hit him harder than any threat. No one asked him to teach anything. People only asked him for protection, money, power, or mercy. But she wasn't asking for those things. She wanted knowledge again, understanding, control over her own safety. He realized then that she didn't panic, because she refused to be powerless. That made something inside him soften, something he didn't allow to move for years. He took her to a quiet parking lot and began teaching her simple things. How to spot someone following her. How to remember license plates without staring too long. How to position herself near exits. How to use her voice to gain attention if danger came too close. She listened carefully, repeating every instruction. She even practiced walking casually while checking reflections in windows without turning her head. She learned fast, too fast for someone who had never lived around danger. It made him wonder who she really was before this life. But as hours passed, she grew tired. Not physically, emotionally. He could see it in the way her shoulders dropped slightly, in the way her eyes lowered even while she tried to stay strong. She finally admitted that all of this scared her more than she let on. She didn't want her simple life destroyed. She didn't want to lose the little piece she had built. Her voice cracked just once, but she quickly steadied it. The boss looked at her and realized she wasn't made of steel. She was made of something far rarer, quiet courage. He wanted to tell her she would be safe, but he couldn't promise that. So instead, he told her something honest. He wouldn't let anything happen to her if he could stop it. She didn't thank him or smile. She just nodded quietly, as if she had been waiting for anyone, to say those words for a very long time. And for a moment, the boss felt protective in a way he hadn't felt since his younger years, before betrayal hardened everything inside him. When he dropped her off at home that evening, she paused before entering her apartment. She turned to him and said, "You taught me how to look for danger, but what do I do if it comes anyway?" He looked at her for a long second, then said, "Then you call me." She studied his face, unsure what he meant to her yet, but something in her eyes softened. She didn't realize it, but by asking him that question, she had pulled him deeper into her life. And the boss knew it. He also knew something else. Danger was already closer than either of them understood. The night fell quiet, but the boss couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He kept replaying her question in his mind. What do I do if danger comes anyway? No one had ever asked him something so vulnerable, and it left a weight in his chest he didn't know how to ignore. He checked the street cameras near her apartment twice, even though his men were already watching. He told himself it was just caution, but deep down, he knew it was something else. He felt responsible for her, and that feeling scared him more than any enemy. Meanwhile, she tried to sleep, but every sound outside made her sit up and listen. She remembered everything he taught her, shadows, car engines, foot patterns, but the thoughts twisted into anxiety. She hated feeling watched. She hated feeling like she needed protection at all. She walked to her window and looked down at the street. She saw one of his guards standing beside a streetlight, pretending to be on his phone. She didn't know if she felt safer or more exposed. But she whispered to herself that fear was not going to win. The next morning, she stepped outside with her delivery bag, trying to act normal. But the moment she turned the corner, she felt eyes on her. Not the guards. Something colder. Something deliberate. She kept walking, remembering his lessons. Don't look scared. Don't turn around. Use reflections. She passed a shop window and saw a man she didn't recognize, standing on the opposite sidewalk. He wasn't pretending to shop or walk. He was just watching her. Her heart thudded hard, but she forced her breath to stay calm. She called the boss. Her voice didn't shake, but he heard the tension anyway. In less than 2 minutes, his car turned the corner, moving faster than normal traffic. The moment he stepped out, the watching man vanished into an alley. The girl pointed toward where he ran, but the boss grabbed her wrist gently, pulling her closer to him. He wasn't angry. He was scared. Scared in a way he didn't show to anyone else. He told her not to move, not to wander, not to try to handle things alone. His voice was quiet but sharp, like he was fighting to keep control. She pulled her wrist back slowly, not because she was offended, but because she saw something strange in him. He looked shaken, not by the enemy, by the idea of her being hurt. She told him softly that she remembered his rules, and she wasn't careless. She just didn't want to hide forever. The boss closed his eyes briefly. She didn't know the enemy he was dealing with. These weren't people who scared easily or gave up because a guard appeared. These were people who played the long game. He decided right there that she couldn't stay alone anymore. He told her she was coming with him. No arguments. She stared at him in disbelief. She didn't want to be trapped in someone else's world, but she also didn't want to lie to herself. If the Watcher had gotten any closer, she wouldn't have known what to do. Slowly, she nodded. The boss exhaled, relieved, but also tense. Bringing her into his territory was dangerous, but letting her stay outside was worse. As they drove away, neither of them noticed the small camera, hidden on a street pole, pointed directly at his car. A red light blinked once. Somewhere in a dark room, an enemy watched the live footage and smiled slowly. The girl wasn't just a random witness anymore. She was becoming the Mafia boss's weakness, and they were ready to use her. That night, the house was quiet, but inside Emma's heart, everything felt loud. She lay awake on her small bed in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. She told herself she didn't care anymore, that she would just work, earn her salary, and go back to her simple life when the month ended. But her chest felt tight. She was tired of always being the one misunderstood, the one trying to fix everything. Meanwhile, Lucas sat in his study, staring at the fireplace. He remembered her voice earlier, shaking, hurt, yet gentle. He felt guilty, but he didn't know how to say it. He wasn't used to apologizing. He wasn't used to trusting. He wasn't used to people staying after things got hard. The next morning, Emma woke early before dawn. She went to the kitchen quietly and prepared breakfast for the girls. She didn't want to argue, didn't want to be noticed, didn't want another misunderstanding. But as she set the plates on the table, the girls walked in with worried eyes. They could feel something was wrong, even without words. "Are you mad at Daddy?" the older girl asked softly, clutching Emma's sleeve. Emma forced a smile and shook her head. "No, sweetheart. I could never be mad at you people." The girl leaned on Emma's chest, hugging her tightly. Emma closed her eyes, holding her back, realizing she was already too emotionally attached. When Lucas came into the kitchen, the air tensed. Emma didn't look at him. She just continued packing the girls' school bags. Lucas felt a strange ache in his chest. He wasn't used to being ignored, especially by someone he respected. Or maybe it was something deeper he didn't want to name. As Emma tried walking past him to leave the room, Lucas suddenly spoke, his voice lower than usual. "Emma, about yesterday." She froze, but didn't turn. She wasn't ready, not yet. She murmured a soft, "It's fine, sir," and walked away. But her voice cracked just enough for him to hear everything she was trying to hide. Lucas watched her go, realizing that for the first time in years, he cared, deeply, about what someone thought of him, and he didn't know how to handle it. Emma tried to keep herself busy the entire day, so she wouldn't have to think too much. She cleaned the house, organized the girls' clothes, washed the dishes, and even arranged the books in the small library. She didn't want her mind drifting back to Lucas, or the argument, or the guilt sitting quietly in her chest. But every corner of the house reminded her of the people she was slowly growing attached to. The girls followed her around more than usual. They drew pictures for her, brought her their toys, even sat beside her while she folded laundry. It was as if they were trying to protect her, trying to keep her from being sad. Emma smiled at them and tried to act normal, but the heaviness in her heart never left. Lucas watched all of this from a distance. He saw the girls sticking to Emma like she was their anchor, and he realized he had been blind to how much they needed her. He also saw how quiet Emma was, how her smile didn't reach her eyes today. It bothered him more than he expected, but he didn't know how to approach her without making things worse. Later in the evening, Emma stepped outside to get some fresh air. The ranch looked peaceful, the sun setting behind the hills and painting the sky orange. She held her arms around herself, breathing slowly. She wanted to stay strong, but she also wished someone would understand her without her explaining herself all the time. Lucas quietly stepped outside a few minutes later. He saw her standing alone by the fence, looking smaller than usual. He walked toward her slowly, not wanting to scare her away. "Emma," he said softly. She stiffened but didn't run this time. She just waited. He stopped beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "I haven't been fair to you," he said quietly. "Yesterday, Today. Maybe since you came here. Emma swallowed hard but didn't speak. She was afraid her voice would betray her. Lucas looked at his hands. Apologizing was new to him. Difficult. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. But I don't want things to stay like this between us. Finally, Emma spoke, her voice soft and tired. I just want peace, sir. I don't want trouble. I came here to help, not to fight. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and his heart shifted. She wasn't arguing. She wasn't demanding anything. She just wanted peace. And somehow, that made him want to protect her even more. The next morning, Emma woke before anyone else. She quietly moved around the house, making breakfast for the girls and setting out their uniforms. Even in the small movements of her routine, she felt a strange tension in the air, as if the calm she worked to create was fragile, temporary. Every creak of the floorboard, every distant sound of hooves in the ranch stirred a sense of alertness she couldn't shake. Danger felt closer than it had before. Lucas watched her from the doorway. He didn't speak at first, just watched her move, careful not to disturb her. He realized something unsettling. He was more aware of her presence than he had been of anyone in years. It wasn't just the danger that kept him on edge, it was her. He wanted to keep her safe, but he also didn't want her to feel trapped. That tension gnawed at him silently. The girls ran in, laughing and chattering, trying to pull Emma into their games. She smiled at them but kept one eye on the door and the driveway. Her instincts told her she couldn't relax yet. Lucas noticed it too. He stepped closer, quietly, and said, "You don't have to carry it all yourself." She paused, just for a second, and gave him a small nod, acknowledging the truth of his words, but refusing to rely on them entirely. As the morning went on, an unexpected letter arrived at the ranch. Lucas picked it up with caution, noting the handwriting was unfamiliar, precise, and deliberate. He opened it carefully. Inside was a single line. "She knows more than she should. Watch closely. She is the key." His jaw tightened. He felt the familiar cold grip of fear return. Emma, standing nearby, noticed his change in expression and asked, "Is something wrong?" He shook his head quickly, trying to hide the warning. But Emma didn't push. She only observed him quietly, sensing that he was unsettled in a way that had nothing to do with her. She wondered if he carried burdens too heavy to share, but she didn't ask. She didn't want to provoke the storm she already sensed in him. Instead, she continued helping the girls, folding clothes and tidying rooms, her focus a deliberate shield against the chaos growing outside the walls. By midday, Lucas decided it was time to test her instincts further. He led her to the stables and explained that today she would learn how to move through the ranch safely while remaining alert. Emma followed, listening carefully, absorbing each instruction. When a sudden sound, a branch snapping, echoed nearby, she reacted instantly, following his guidance without hesitation. For the first time, Lucas felt a mixture of relief and awe. She wasn't just learning. She was adapting. As the sun began to set, painting the ranch in warm hues, Lucas and Emma stood side by side, overlooking the property. He didn't speak at first, just watched the horizon. Then he asked softly, "Do you know how dangerous you are to me?" Emma turned, confused. I don't understand," she replied. He looked at her steadily and said, "Not to others. To me. Because I can't keep you safe without changing everything about myself." She looked away, realizing that being part of his world meant more than just danger. It meant becoming entwined with someone who would not let her go, even if he had to risk everything. The wind shifted, carrying a faint, almost imperceptible sound from the distance. Both of them stiffened. Lucas's hand moved slightly toward her, instinctively protective. Emma noticed and didn't move away. The ranch, which had seemed peaceful moments ago, now felt alive with unseen watchers. Somewhere beyond the hills, someone was watching them. And this time, the threat wasn't subtle. It was deliberate, and both of them knew the next move would not be easy. By dawn, the ranch felt different. The air was thick with anticipation. Lucas paced quietly in his study, reviewing the threats and the messages he had received over the past days. Every instinct told him the enemy was closer than ever. But he also knew something else. He couldn't protect Emma by staying distant. She had already chosen to be part of his world, and that choice changed everything. Emma, meanwhile, moved through the house with purpose, preparing breakfast for the girls. She was calmer than the day before, but her eyes were sharper, scanning every corner, listening for the faintest sound. Lucas watched her from the doorway, feeling a mix of admiration and fear. She had grown in these few days, stronger, smarter, braver. And yet, she was still the same person who had walked in as a delivery girl, unassuming and fearless in her own quiet way. The morning passed quietly, but Lucas knew the calm was temporary. Suddenly, a commotion came from the gate. Guards shouting, the sound of engines revving. Lucas grabbed Emma's hand instinctively, pulling her behind him. A group of armed men approached, but Emma didn't panic. Instead, she remembered every lesson he had taught her, and she guided him through the escape routes, signaling directions, noticing every shadow, every potential trap. Together, they moved like one, instinct and trust blending seamlessly. Once they reached a safe hideaway on the property, Lucas turned to her, his face tense, but relieved. "You saved us," he said simply. She shook her head. "We saved each other," she replied, and for the first time, her eyes met his fully, not with fear, not with hesitation, but with understanding. The walls he had built around himself began to crumble. For years, he had trusted no one. Now, he realized he could trust her. As they caught their breath, Lucas handed her the file she had found weeks ago, the one that revealed the traitor within his organization. "This changes everything," he said. She scanned it quickly, then looked up, her expression hardening. "You can't trust anyone blindly anymore," she said. Lucas nodded, knowing she was right. But for the first time, he also knew that she wasn't afraid of the truth. She was ready to stand beside him, no matter what came next. The twist came moments later. A new message appeared on Lucas's phone, a video file. It showed someone watching them through hidden cameras for weeks, someone who had always been closer than he imagined. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she recognized the person in the footage. It was someone she thought she could trust. The betrayal ran deep, and it hit harder because it was personal. Both of them realized that danger wasn't over. It had just changed shape. As night fell over the ranch, Lucas and Emma stood together outside the main house. He placed his hand on hers, not forcefully, but possessively, as if claiming her trust and partnership in the storm to come. She didn't pull away. Somewhere in the darkness, headlights flashed briefly on the horizon. They froze. Neither spoke, but their eyes said everything. The fight wasn't finished. The enemy was still out there, and the next move would decide everything, for their lives, their trust, and the future they were beginning to build together.